What's up, everybody? Cat McCoy here. So let's talk about one of my favorite bait presentations in the fall. The fall is notorious for a heavy feeding period. These bass are traveling around just following these big schools of bait, and they're just crushing them and consuming and gorging themselves, getting ready for the spawn that's coming up. So we're just tracking these schools of bait, and there are very few baits that mimic bait balls better than the old umbrella rig, otherwise known as the Alabama rig. The fall and into the winter is when the umbrella rig really shines, because what you are trying to imitate is that ball of bait that those fish are gorging on. We have to go to tactics like a jerk bait, like a fluke, and nothing catches them as well as the umbrella rig right now. So let's get into the meat of this video and talk about what an umbrella rig is all about, how you fish it, and what makes it so dominant this time of year. Let's get into it.
Before we go forward, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and you can keep up with all the new content we put out on a weekly basis.
When you're dialed in and the Alabama rig is working at its pinnacle, it's not uncommon to catch multiple fish on one cast.
I got two. Check that out. Two at a time. What do you think? I'll take two at a time. One. Two. That's a lot of fun. Better get out here and get your chance. Or crush it. So as you can see, an umbrella rig or an Alabama rig is a multi-armed lure. Depending on the brand you buy, most of them come either in a 5-arm or a 3-arm. Now you definitely want to check with your state and local regulations to find out exactly how many you are able to fish and how many hooks you can keep on those baits. Here in Florida we can use 5. Alabama, I think you can use 5. Actually, I think you can use more. But in places like Tennessee, California, you can use 3 hooks, or in California 2 hooks. And then the rest of the arms have to have dummy baits on them, so basically baits without a hook. Here in Florida, we get to use 5. And that's the Alabama rig. Now, an Alabama rig can come in 2 configurations basically. This one has blades. You can get single blades, double blades, or you can get one without any blades. Now, there are a ton of brands out there, and the prices go from anywhere in the mid-teens all the way up past $40, $50. I don't really see the value in spending that kind of money. $13 rig works just great. We catch a lot of fish on a $13 to $15 rig. So it's all up to you, you know, and generally the higher pressured lakes that you fish, the real clear water, you might have to go with a finesse style umbrella rig, or even they make a clear armed rig that you cannot see the arms as you're swimming it through the water. But it really is just dependent on the type of water that you fish. Every cast. The A-rig typically sees its most success in cleaner water, because the swim bait presentation in general is something that fish are visually looking at and going to strike. So the dirtier the water, they just have a hard time seeing this bait. And then obviously the dirtier the water, that's when you really want to go with the blades, versus the crystal clear water where you want to kind of make it a little more subtle. But basically you cater the umbrella rig to your conditions. So if you're fishing real shallow water like we have here in Florida, you want to downsize the weights that you use. In my case, the way we've been throwing it is we typically run 1/8 or 16th ounce lead head, ball head jigs on the bottom two, potentially even that middle arm. But the top baits, we don't put any weights on. And if I'm really fishing some thicker cover, I don't even put any weights on that middle, and I'll just use the 2 weights on the bottom. That does a couple things. It sets a keel, so it makes the bottom 2 ride on the bottom, and it'll keep that thing riding straight instead of twisting along as you swim it through the collar. But if you're in deeper water, 30, 40 feet, that's when you want to upsize those weights. You want to go with up to even a 1/2 ounce head on each one of your arms. And you definitely need to be equipped to throw these heavier rigs. With the lighter ones that we got, typically a medium heavy rod is good enough. I like to still throw it on a heavy, but the heavier you go, the heavier that rod needs to be. And it's not something that you just can sling out there. You have to lob cast it out there. It gets to be very cumbersome throwing this throughout the day.
Notice the side lob cast that I have to make with the Alabama rig. Not like your typical cast.
Got 2 again. One, 2. Now, how do I fish an umbrella rig? First off, I'm making sure that I'm fishing the bait with the weight heavy enough for the conditions. So obviously I fish a lot of grass here in Florida, so I try to keep these pretty light. I just want to keep that Alabama rig fishing right over the top of that grass. If I'm around timber in some of these lakes up north, then I want that bait to come and deflect off some of that timber. But you want to be down there in the depth that reaches the strike zone for your area. But basically it's a steady retrieve. Once you get it out there, you drop it to the depth that you're fishing, and you just slowly, steadily retrieve it. Now every now and again, about every 8 to 10 cranks, I'll stutter it and I'll flare that bait. And if you ever look at a bait ball in nature, you see it kind of pulsing like that. That'll trigger a lot of bites when that happens. But typically it's just a straight retrieve. And I'm trying to, if I'm in places like up north where there's timber, I try to deflect it. Here in Florida, I just try to tick the top of that grass and just keep it swimming. The visual effect of this bait, they will strike it. As far as what bait you should put on the back of your hooks, it really depends on where you're fishing. If you're fishing around where there's a lot of shad, you want to mimic that shad. If you're fishing where there's alewife, mimic that. Here in Florida, there's shiner everywhere. And in this fall winter transition season, the shiner bite just gets to be dominant. So we like to throw shiner colors. And shiners typically are in your golds, your greens. So I'm kind of fishing shiner patterns. Now, if this was later in the winter or earlier in the spring where these bass gorge on a shad spawn, then that's when I go more with my whites, my silvers. But right now, you can't beat shiner colored lures on the back of your umbrella rig.
Let's quickly talk about the terminal tackle needed to fish the A-rig. As you can see, I just go with some basic ball head jigs. These ones I think are the Picasso ones that have the eyes built in, but you don't need that specialty. You can just go with a straight lead head, ball head jig. For my top baits, I'll go with straight EWG hook, that size to fit the swim bait that you're fishing. A big note is the thickness or the gauge of this snap swivel right here can really make or break your success when you're fishing the rig. Because if you're fishing too light of a snap, these things will bust all the time. So if you're in Clearwater, Ultra Finesse, you can get away with that thinner snap. But here in Florida, I like a heavy gauge. I'll even go so far as to remove the snap and go straight with a heavy grade split ring. The cheaper the rig, typically they'll go with really lightweight terminal tackle, and that'll break your heart fishing in places with big fish like Florida where you're fishing thick grass. Do not be afraid to use the thicker gauge equipment because they don't see all this stuff, but you will definitely feel it when you lose one.
Hopefully this information will help you the next time you're out fishing an Alabama rig. Until next time, tight lines.